In a dark and smoky cave, there is a long-dead human skeleton. Near the skeleton's hand, a shimmering green gem is visible. Elsewhere, a man with brown hair and a beard looks surprised. The man exclaimed, "Shit." He and a blonde man in armor appear to be confronting a man in a black robe. The black-robed person picks up the green gem previously seen near the skeleton. The robed person stands with his back to a group of people consisting of a reddish-brown-haired woman, a black-haired man, a blonde man in armor, and a woman with long black hair. The blonde woman in the group looks surprised as she holds a staff and a green gem. The black-robed man said to the blonde woman, "Put this gem on your staff. It can strengthen it." The woman nervously replies, "Well, double quotes." Putting the gem on his staff, Arthur said, "Let's go." The blonde man in armor nodded in agreement. The blonde man in armor said to the others, "No is right. We need to get out of here before there is another eruption." The group runs out of the cave. The cave appears to be cracking and giving off light. There was an explosion in the cave. Rocks are flying out. A blonde man in armor yells, "Kryl." A brown-haired man shouted, "Aye aye," while creating a whirlpool from his shield. The whirlpool hits a large brown worm-like monster. The man with brown hair shouted, "Samantha, Elijah, attack." The blonde woman chants, "By the name of the water god," while pointing her staff at the worm monster. The blonde woman's siren's howl spell creates a huge wave of water that hits the worm monster. The monster is bounced off. The black-haired man uses the stone serpent's grasp spell to trap the worm monster with stones. The monster struggles and the stones begin to crack. The brown-haired man looks serious. Even Elijah's attacks can't even scratch its body. Another man shouts, "Jasmine, Reginald, follow me." The other two answered who and prepared to attack. The blonde man in armor lights his sword on fire. The blonde man in armor said, "Jasmine, you and I will keep her busy." Reginald tried to aim between his eyes. Reginald replied, "Okay?" And Jasmine replied, "Got it." The blonde man in armor continued, "If that's not enough to take him down, Lucas and Note should be able to find an opening." Jasmine attacks with her sword, and the blonde man in armor attacks with his fire sword. The fire sword attack hits the worm monster. Jasmine attacks with her two green swords. The brown-haired and bearded man attacks with his big hammer. The huge hammer hits the body of the worm monster. The gray-haired man thought to himself, "Am I scared?" The man with reddish-brown hair attacks the worm monster with a fire spell. He thought to himself, "Ordinary fire spells won't be strong enough to hurt this worm, so that means..." The man strengthens his fire attack. He says, "My attack must be hotter." He and a man in a black robe attack together. The black-robed man attacks with his sword shrouded in mana. The black-haired man attacks with the spell's piston stamp and slash. The man with brown hair and beard shouts, "Jasmine, now!" Jasmine attacks a crack in the worm monster's body. The worm monster screams in pain. The blonde man in armor yelled, "Lucas." The man with brown hair and beard said, "Wait, the worm is running away." They follow the fleeing worm monster. The blonde man in armor said, "I think we're safe now. Let's go." The blonde man in armor says to Jasmine, "Good job." Jasmine just nodded. The gray-haired Lucas says, "TCH. Is that all it takes to scare the big worm?" There was a rumbling sound. Arthur said, "That worm isn't trying to kill us. He's just buying time for the next eruption." Arthur yells, "Shit, Lucas." Luke is seen falling down. Arthur protects Lucas with a fire spell. He says, "Bathe me by your protective flames." The gray-haired woman pushes the reddish-brown-haired woman while saying, "Get off me." Arthur saw the Brauld who was holding the blonde woman from falling. He shouts, "Brauld." The blonde-haired woman says, and the blonde-haired woman shouts, "No." Inside a dark cave, several people lie weak. A woman with light brown hair, looking worried, calls for help for Brauld, a blonde man who is badly injured. A woman with fiery red hair, with a face covering that reveals only her eyes and mouth, instructs to keep Brauld stable. Brauld, the blonde man, appears to be in excruciating pain, blood flowing from his mouth. Arthur sits in the center of the ruined cave. He looks exhausted and lets out a long sigh. A large man with blonde hair and a braided beard offers Arthur a sandwich. He suggests that Arthur eat it to cheer himself up a bit. Arthur accepts the sandwich and says thank you. The big man explains that the sandwich is a special sandwich that he has saved to eat when he is down in the dungeon. He goes on to explain the best way to eat the sandwich, which is to slightly burn the inside to melt the cheese. Arthur looks closely at the sandwich he is holding, then smells the aroma of the sandwich. The big man also eats his sandwich and asks Arthur to pass on his thanks to his fiancée, who came up with the recipe. Arthur and the big man enjoy their sandwiches together. Arthur thinks that the sandwich tastes very good. The big man explains that his fiancée made the recipe, including how to dry and season the beef. Arthur complimented the big man on his fiancée and promised to pass on his thanks. An argument ensues between Lucas, Arthur, and the big man. Brauld blames Lucas for not protecting himself and Samantha. Brauld retorted by saying that Lucas was also not alert to put up the barrier. Their argument is stopped by Arthur shouting Lucas' name. Arthur walks up to Lucas and asks him if he has no brain. Arthur thinks Lucas has a flaw because he is concerned with his ego and rank. Arthur ends the argument by tapping Lucas on the shoulder and leaving him. Arthur tells Brauld that he needs to make a decision to continue the journey or not because of Brauld's badly injured condition. He explains that he and the others are fine, but Brauld's condition is worrying. Brauld seems to ponder for a moment. With a face full of determination, he decides to continue the journey even though his hand is badly injured. He states that this may be his last journey, but he will finish it. Brauld then appointed Arthur to lead the group. As Arthur was considered the most calm and level-headed among them, the rest of the group agree. Arthur accepts the responsibility of leading the group. He decides to rest for an hour before continuing the journey. Brauld looks around and realizes that something is different. The tunnel, which was usually unblocked, was now covered with rocks. The big man tried not to make a big deal out of it. The big man uses his strength to destroy the rocks blocking the tunnel. After the rocks were destroyed, they found an unexpected place with a different view. A group of adventurers are exploring a cave. The cave is vast and tall, with no visible supporting pillars. A mystical blue light shines into the cave, giving it a magical feel. A group member wearing a mask comments on the absence of support pillars. Another member, a woman with long black hair, confirmed that they were indeed in a cave. A blonde woman in a yellow dress admires the beauty of the cave. A man with a beard and long hair, carrying a large hammer, looking tired. A large man in armor suggests resting. He claims to feel sleepy. The masked man considers the suggestion to rest, but he decides to continue the journey. He holds his sword tightly, showing his determination. The man in armor says that something is wrong with the place. He doesn't hear or see anything but grass and trees. The masked man is worried about the place. He feels that something is wrong, but he doesn't know what it is. The woman with long black hair sees something that takes her by surprise. A mysterious figure in a black suit appears before them. The man in armor calls out the name Clara. Looking surprised and incredulous, he asks if it is really Clara. A man with a scar on his face asks the man in armor if he is okay. The man in shining armor replies enthusiastically, convinced that Clara cannot be dead. The man in armor runs towards the figure he believes to be Clara. The masked man yells, "Hey!" He looks worried. The masked man asks the man in armor to stop, warning him of the danger. The woman with long black hair says that the fog creates an illusion. The masked man realizes that it is the fog that makes him feel bad. He asks everyone to stay together. The fog is playing tricks on their senses. The masked man asks Samantha to activate the visor. Samantha nods. Samantha uses the water barrier spell to protect her group. A large water shield appears, surrounding them. Samantha looks confused. She asks who Clara is. One of the group members explains that Clara is the fiancée of the man in armor. The blonde man and the man with long brown hair, who who has a scar on his face, say that Clara died in the dungeon. They saw her with their own eyes and had even cremated and burned her ashes. The man with long brown hair asks the others to find the man in armor. A man with long white hair and red eyes, angry. He questions his group's ability as veteran adventurers. The masked man asks the woman with long black hair if she is okay. The woman admits that she is shaken because she saw her father's illusion. Her father reaches out and smiles at her. The woman with long black hair looks terrified as several shadowy figures appear behind her. The masked man calms her down, assuring her that she will be fine. The masked man asks Jasmine if she has a spell to dispel the fog. Jasmine replies that her spell is not strong enough to remove it all, but she can make a path to find the man in armor. Jasmine uses the spell Banshee's Howl to clear the fog. A strong wind blows, creating a path through the fog. Jasmine's spell successfully clears the path, but the fog quickly returns. Vines emerge from the mist, surprising the group. Arthur wonders how they could not have noticed that many vines in the fog. The masked man notices that the vines are unaffected by Jasmine's spell. The masked man asks Lucas to use his spell. Lucas agrees and uses the Crescent Embed spell to burn the vines. Lucas' spell fails to burn the vines. The masked man comments that fighting the plants is not easy. The masked man asks Reginald to protect the witches while they prepare a more powerful spell. Reginald, Brauld, Jasmine, and the blonde man follow the masked man's orders to break through the vines. A giant plant with many tendrils emerges from the ground. A group of 4 people tried to penetrate the plant. One of them, a young man with red hair, called out, "Let's go through together." The 4 people attacked the giant plant with their magic and weapons. A black-haired woman used green wind magic, a blonde-haired man used fire magic, and the red-haired youth used blue water magic. They managed to cut off a few tendrils, and the red-haired youth even managed to crush one of the giant plant's heads with his water magic. The red-haired youth noticed that the plant was not burnt by the fire magic. He wondered, is this plant not burning because of the moisture inside? The red-haired youth continued his attack with the sword enveloped in water magic. He manages to cut a few more tendrils and exclaims, "Success!" The red-haired youth called out Brauld and told him to use the incendiary spell, but he stopped when he saw something. The blonde man, Brauld, used massive fire magic. He said, "Do you think an AA class like Mentor would give up just because of a giant plant?" The red-haired youth felt that Brauld was being rash. The black-haired woman attacks again with her wind magic. Brauld continued to attack with his fire magic, but the giant plant caught him with its tendrils. The red-haired youth rebukes Brauld for being rash and reminds him that this should be his last adventure. He said, "Didn't you say earlier that this would be your last adventure? Is that because you plan to die here? If not, fight smartly. We still need you." A white-haired young man, Lucas, drinks a potion and uses fire magic. He explains that the spell is weaker but spreads easily on contact. Lucas' magic burns the giant plant. The red-haired youth comments that Lucas is still thinking clearly. A shouting man warns Elijah, a black-haired youth, about the plant's attack. Elijah dodges and Brauld immediately attacks him. Elijah signals another young man. The young man who got the signal from Elijah uses earth magic. He chanted, "Tremble and split thy mother earth and bury my foes." The plant was partially destroyed by the earth magic. The red-haired youth says that their combination of attacks worked and they now have time to search for Kryl. A blonde-haired woman, Samantha, uses healing magic to restore them. She casts the spell, "Replenish my allies and grant us the light of life." The red-haired young man praises Samantha. He said he didn't expect Samantha to use that spell in this situation. Samantha looks exhausted. The red-haired youth caught her. Then the plant grew again. Lucas fails to stop the plant. The red-haired boy realizes that the plant is absorbing the mist he created and concludes they should stop using magic. The red-haired youth looks surprised when he sees something behind the plant. The giant plant emits a powerful aura. Arthur with a white mask and blue eyes stands in the middle of a dark forest. He removes his sword from its scabbard, preparing for battle. Soon, a giant figure with fiery red eyes emerges from the mist. A blonde-haired woman lies on the ground, terrified. She had only ever seen the Elder Wood Guardian in books. A blonde man in white armor looks worried. The gods don't seem to want them alive. A black-haired man next to him looks resigned. A bearded man in a suit of armor looks shocked. He can't believe what he's seeing, an S-class mana beast. Kryl, the bearded man, is entangled in the tree roots. He begged Claren not to leave him. Meanwhile, a group of people watched in horror as the Elderwood Guard moved closer. A brown-haired man with a large hammer tries to fight the Elderwood Guard. Arthur warns him not to fight as they will not win. A black-haired woman shouts note. Meanwhile, the brown-haired woman keeps trying to attack, but the Elderwood Guard easily brushes her off. Arthur tells Elijah to protect Jasmine and take Brauld and head for the exit. Elijah immediately pulls the hand of a dark-haired man with glasses. Meanwhile, the red-haired woman prepares to fight the Elderwood Guard. Elijah managed to make a defense. The red-haired woman grabs the black-haired woman's hand and says they should leave. The black-haired woman asks about the others. The man with glasses is injured. Red-haired woman says that she promised to them and to black-haired woman's parents to keep him safe. The blonde man and the blonde woman attack the Elderwood Keeper, but are knocked down. The giant tree manages to ensnare the Elderwood Keeper. The red-haired woman tells Elijah to protect Jasmine as she takes Brauld out. The Elderwood Guard roars, knocking down the giant tree. Reginald is entangled in the roots. Arthur yells at Jasmine to burn the plant that entangled Reggie. Luke points his wand at Arthur and uses his fire magic right in front of Arthur. The white-haired witch fell to the ground, her wand thrown away. The witch steers ahead with a blank stare and a scarred face, muttering, "This is not me." The white-haired witch returned her gaze. Two people, a blonde man and a black-haired girl, are seen fighting with swords. The white-haired witch was wounded in the mouth. Blood drips from her lips. Holding her wand, the witch said, "I am of the Great Wykes family." The witch continued, as one of the keys that led Sapin to victory against Elenwar. She turned around, looking at the two people who had been fighting, a russet-haired man and a blonde-haired girl. "To stay alive and continue my lineage." A huge explosion occurred, sending the witch flying into the air. The reddish-brown-haired man lies on the ground, his clothes in tatters and his body wounded. A girl with long black hair and a man with blonde hair were shocked to see the state of the man with reddish-brown hair. The white-haired witch yelled, "Stand back." The black-haired girl deflects the fire attack from the blonde-haired man, but it is not blocked and explodes. The black-haired man yells, "Jasmine." Jasmine, the black-haired girl, is thrown off and crashed into a cliff. The black-haired man threw a ball of energy at the white-haired witch and said, "You don't do anything futile. You want to get blown up too." The white-haired witch prepares her magic, while the black-haired man asks, "What are you doing?" The witch replies with a smirk, "You think I'm going to risk my life and help commoners like you escape? You will honestly go down in history as the brave hero who stopped the beast long enough for me to escape." Another big explosion occurred. In the midst of the explosion, the witch said, "I will tell everyone about your brave deeds." She was hit and thrown to the ground. The black-haired man was badly injured and shouted, "No!" The monster beast roars. The man with black hair surrenders. The monster beast attacks. A huge fire explosion appears. A blonde man appears with the power of fire. The black-haired man looked at the blonde man and said, "Brauld, do you still want to bully this kid? Fight with me?" Challenged Brauld with the power of a blazing fire. Monster Beast roars in anger. A fierce battle between Brauld and the monster beast ensues. Jasmine and the black-haired man lie weak on the ground. The black-haired man coughed up blood. Brauld continues to fight against the monster beast. Brauld is smiling. The monster beast is badly injured by Brauld's attack. The ground is shaking. Note, a man with reddish-brown hair is badly injured. The black-haired man is watching him. The black-haired man approaches Jasmine, who is lying on the ground. Note looks in pain. Note stares intently at the monster beast. Note thought, "It seems that I have no choice." But will I be able to survive after I use this thing? Note uses the hidden power inside her body. Gold-colored markings appear on her arms and hands. Note's eyes change color. Phase 2, Dragon Awakening. Arthur Lewin's training at Elenoir has resulted in a breakthrough that has left Virion perpetually confused. Arthur's first breakthrough has opened the first phase, Acquire. By utilizing one of Sylvia's innate skills, Arthur was able to temporarily separate himself from time and space. This phase is very limited as it depends on Arthur's core and physical body. The second breakthrough, however, is something Arthur did not expect. What Virion achieved in a matter of decades, Arthur took only 2.5 years. The next phase is integration. Arthur appears to be in pain during the integration phase. He then rises with white hair and flaming golden eyes. A black-winged dragon, Sylvia, calls Papa to Arthur. He is seen facing a tiger monster that roars in pain. Sylvia then flies over to Arthur and says, "I'm coming now." Arthur assures Sylvia that he is fine and asks Sylvia to stay away for a while. Arthur tells Sylvia that if anything happens to him, she must return to Halstia's house for him. Sylvia refuses and insists that she can help. Arthur looks in pain and clutches his chest. Arthur pleads with Sylvia. He endures the pain. Sylvia finally relents and promises to obey him. Snippets of words such as power, God, superior, universe, mana, king, strength, ants fill Arthur's mind. Arthur, with a form of white hair and glowing golden eyes, stood up again with his right hand emitting bluish-white energy. Arthur runs and jumps towards a large, thorny tree. He focuses the energy in his right hand and prepares to attack. Arthur says, "Let's play." The big tree is surprised to see Arthur's strength, which was weak but is now very strong. Arthur did not blame Virion for knocking him down the first time he used the integration phase. He wanted to finish the fight quickly and hoped to survive his reaction. He launched an attack. Arthur attacks the mouth of the tree monster. His attack seemed to have no effect and the ground around them shook. Arthur cursed. Although Arthur can utilize all the mana around him in this form, his body is still not strong enough to withstand this spell. Arthur tried to dodge the counterattack from the tree monster. Arthur exclaims, "Come on," while trying to withstand the attack from the tree monster. Arthur casts the Absolute Zero spell. The tree monster appears frozen. Arthur stands in the middle of the icy ruins. He then activates 3 magic elements at once: fire, water, and lightning, then clenches his purple energy-covered fist and strikes the giant tree until it is completely destroyed. Arthur falls unconscious and injured in the icy ruins. Arthur struggles to get up and limps away. In the town of Xyrus, Alice and Reynold, Ellie collapses after a hard workout. Alice is worried and hopes that Ellie's condition will be like Arthur's. Her husband, Reynolds Lewin, reminds Alice of how Arthur managed to recover in the past. Reynolds checks on the sleeping Ellie. Alice notices the ring on her finger glowing red, signaling Arthur is in danger. She wonders if the ring is broken. A red-haired man lay weakly on the ground, his face cut and bleeding. He grits his teeth in pain. The red-haired man is coughing and bleeding from his mouth. He tries to get up with difficulty, his body trembling. He was gasping for breath, his eyes watering from the excruciating pain. A young man with black hair approached the red-haired man. "Thank goodness you're awake," he said. The young man sees a crystal and a glove near the red-haired man. "Destroy crystal, glove," the red-haired man stammered. The black-haired youth took the crystal and crushed it in his hand. The crystal gave off a bright green light that illuminated the red-haired man's body. The man groaned in pain as the light touched his wound. The red-haired man recalls his past. He was seen fighting with a sword in his hand, then lying on the ground with wounds all over his body. There is a puddle of water near his hand. The red-haired man came to his senses. He stared at the ceiling of the cave, his breathing heavy. "Lucas Wykes," he muttered. His eyes widened as he remembered something. A young man with dark hair approached the man. "James," he called. "Ooh," groaned the red-haired man. "Where's Jasmine?" he asked weakly. The black-haired youth pointed at a black-haired girl lying not far from them. She's over there, he replied. The black-haired youth explained Jasmine's condition. She was hit hard by Lucas' spell and her body is not protected by mana either, he said. He continued, I have basic medicine, so I have already treated her burns. But I think there might be internal injuries on her. The red-haired man looked at Jasmine with concern. Arthur, he muttered. The black-haired youth took the gem from his shattered glove. Take the gem in my glove and use it on him, he tells Arthur. The young man crushed the gem and uses it to treat Jasmine. Jasmine's breathing began to improve. I think she'd be fine after a few hours of rest, said the dark-haired youth. It's a good thing Mom gave me the recovery stone, he added. Art felt his body hurt a lot. I've never felt this bad since I was 4 years old, he complained. He remembered the good times of his past. A black dragon flew in the sky and talked to someone below. Papa, you're awake now. Are you okay? It asked. The person below replied, I'm fine now. Where are you? The dragon replied, I listened to your orders and kept my distance. The person responded, good, we are out of danger now, so just continue your training. The person talking to the black dragon was in a dark, monster-infested place. It doesn't matter, Papa, he says to the dragon. I can tell by our relationship that it is important. He continued, the dragon said, trust me, Sylvie. We're just resting right now, but, said Sylvie. The man said again, go and do what you have to do, Sylvie. I'll see you soon. The dark-haired young man, Art, approached Arthur, who was still lying weak. Are you feeling better now? He asked. Arthur replied jokingly, good enough to run a marathon. Arthur tried to get up, but fell back down. Art chuckled at this. Hey, he said. Arthur said, by the way, I never thought that note, the masked legend who tested with me, was the same age as me, he thought. Arthur suddenly remembered something. My mask, he exclaimed. Arthur apologized. Sorry, apparently it fell off during the fight and I can't find it. What about my sword? Asked Arthur. Art asked back, did you see the black stick I was carrying? Arthur nodded. There it is, replied Art. I didn't know if it was valuable or not, so I just put it there, Art said. Arthur was breathing heavily. Thank you, he said sincerely. For saving Jasmine and me, he continued. And also for getting my sword when you could have easily escaped on your own, he added. Really, thank you, Arthur said once again. Arthur replied, well, if I left you dying there, that would make me just like Lucas, wouldn't it? Arthur chuckled. Not really, he replied. Arthur was curious about his previous actions. I wonder why you stayed behind when that Elderwood Guardian showed up. I saw Jasmine ask you to leave, he said. Arthur replied in a proud tone, and a king never abandons his people. He continued, I promised someone very important to me that I would be a better person and respect those around me. Arthur continued. Elijah looked at him in surprise. You sound like an old man, he said with a chuckle. What kind of life have you had up until now that you would promise someone that? He asked. Arthur looked thoughtful. I sometimes wonder myself, he muttered. But enough about that, Arthur said. By the way, how long have I been unconscious? He asked. Elijah replied, it's hard to say, but definitely more than a day. Yeah, muttered Arthur. Art said, I think we'll be stuck here for a while until Jasmine recovers, so we should use this time to get to know each other. Art extended his hand. I'm Arthur, Art said. Elijah welcomed Art's hand. Arthur Lewin, he replied. But you can call me Art, Art said. Arthur smiled. In a dimly lit room, a child's hand is seen drooping limply. Arthur, are you the one who made this metal armor? Elijah calmly replied, I made it like a cave. Elijah looked thoughtful, then said, I think Guardian Elderwood's body supports the whole cave. Arthur continued, even though you're a deviant, I don't know if you can manipulate metal. He added, not create or enchant it. Arthur, that's why I thought you were a dwarf. Elijah said, too much to call a secret, eh? Arthur chuckled, then said, tell me about it. Elijah looks thoughtful. Elijah says, how about this? I'll tell you about it if you tell me what happened before. Your hair turned white, Elijah said. Elijah looked surprised. And there are shining symbols all over your body. And your eyes are purple. He was shocked and decided to tell his story. Elijah began, well, you're right about one thing. Since I grew up in the kingdom of Darv, I'm not sure where I really came from. Elder Radias, who took care of me as far back as I can remember, always avoided talking about my parents. And the memories of my childhood came in confusing and painful flashes. Yet I lived normally until I broke through the dark orange stage. After reaching that energy wave, I passed out. When I came to, I was already surrounded by black metal thorns. And after that happened, Elder Radias told me it was time to explore Daikaten without telling me why. Everything happened suddenly, and it couldn't help that I felt this feeling. It's like an itch I can't scratch. But I know it has something to do with my powers and where I come from. By the campfire, someone named Jasmine says to Arthur that fish is no good, Arthur. This one tastes better. Elijah and Arthur laughed together. It's my fault. I didn't mean to turn this into a weird emotional conversation. Arthur said, don't worry about it. So what about you? What's your story? Asked Elijah. I'm a quadra-elemental wizard with 2 aberrations of ice and lightning, Arthur replied. Elijah was surprised and asked, wait, what about that mark and color change? I am also a beast tamer, Arthur said. What you saw that time was when I released my beast will. Elijah was surprised again. Beast will. Wait, how old are you? I turned 11 a few months ago, Arthur replied. Hey, I'm a lot older than you, exclaimed Elijah. Elijah said, but I don't think that's anything to brag about. Arthur is laughing. Arthur looks upset. Arthur laughs along with him. Arthur winces in pain. Ooh. Elijah asks worriedly, are you okay? I'm fine. Arthur replies. Jasmine woke up. Jasmine's eyes were glowing bright green. Arthur was surprised. Oh, Jasmine. Arthur said, you're She hugged Arthur and said, I'm sorry. Jasmine cried, I'm so sorry. Arthur comforted her. It's okay, Arthur said. I'm fine, Jasmine, Arthur continued as he patted Jasmine's head. Jasmine cried again. This is not good. Arthur continued, I can't take care of you anymore. I was the one who was being stubborn that time. I'm the one who should apologize for dragging you into this mess with me. Arthur seemed to notice. Has he always been this small? Arthur groaned in pain. Ooh, your wound, Arthur exclaimed. Elijah, you still have our bag, right? Jasmine asks Arthur. Why, yes, I have some emergency medicine in my bag. It should treat both of you, Arthur replied. Jasmine treating Arthur's wound you too. Thank you, said Jasmine. I feel better already, said Arthur. So now, it's time for us to go home, said Jasmine. In the midst of the darkness, a hand reached out. Jasmine stared with a serious expression. A loud rattling sound was heard, indicating that something large was opening. 3 people, a Jasmine, a young man with bandages on his arms, and an Elijah, stood at the mouth of the cave, looking into the darkness. Inside the cave, there are scattered ice crystals. The crystals shine among the ruins. The 3 men are standing on the ruins, facing the light coming from the opening of the cave. Arthur said, waiting to ask his 2 friends, do you think anyone is still standing? Elijah, Reginald, and Brold were eaten by the Elderwood Guardian before you fought at that time. He added hesitantly, so it's doubtful. Jasmine asks, what about Samantha? Elijah explains, I made a metal shield for her before the cave separated us. He continued, but the situation is so bad, I'm not sure if she can survive. How do we find her among all this rubble? Arthur said, even the Elderwood Guardian's beast core might be lost among this rubble. The Elijah knelt down, examining the ground. He said, I couldn't do this while underground, but I'll try to look for it now. He closed his eyes and focused his power, chanting in the rock, Vi tapate rosi, and then in the ground, Vi tainte sapal. He continued his mantra, search for all that is lost in your endless embrace, Vi tapa your myrialiag embrace. Earth's pulse, a circle of energy appears around him. The circle of energy pulsed and expanded, sweeping the surrounding area. A ting, ting, ting sound was heard as the energy detected something. A figure was detected under the rubble. Elijah's eyes opened wide. He exclaimed, "I found Samantha." He continued with relief, and she's still breathing. Arthur thought, "I thought the Earth Pulse spell could only scan the ground." He looks at Elijah suspiciously. Who exactly is this kid? Arthur and Jasmine nod in agreement to leave. The three of them walk through the ice crystal ruins. Elijah is walking in front, leading the way. The Elijah reaches out and grabs a large boulder. He pulled the rock with his strength, opening the way for them. The Elijah pulls the cloth covering a figure. "Samantha?" He calls out. Samantha lay unconscious with wounds all over her body. Arthur prevented the Elijah from touching the plant wrapped around Samantha's leg. No, the sweet plant serves as a brace for her leg. If you remove it, the wound will worsen. He checks Samantha's condition. Her pulse is stable and her breathing is good. He continued, "Good, the heat is high, but I don't think her life is in danger now. And the silver lining has rendered her unconscious." Jasmine carries Samantha in her arms. She asks the Elijah, "Should we go now?" The Arthur said, "It is impossible to find the Elderwood Guardian Beast Core in this mess." He continued, "It seems that valuable treasures will be buried in this place." The three of them walked away. Elijah stumbled again. "What now?" Arthur replied, "No problem." Suddenly there was a big explosion and a strong wind. Elijah and Jasmine are shocked, and Jasmine mutters, "Don't tell me." A huge black dragon emerges from behind the rubble. Elijah looks at the dragon in amazement. "Papa," said the dragon, and Arthur replied, "I am here." Arthur said to the dragon, "Yes, you are here. And you've grown heavy." Arthur continued, "And wide, and tall." The dragon licked Arthur. The dragon licks Arthur. Elijah asked in confusion, It's a wyvern, isn't it? But it has 4 limbs." He realized something. "Wait, that's not a dragon, is it?" Arthur gave her an annoyed look. "It's a dragon. Don't look at me like I'm the weird one." Arthur strokes the dragon's head. "This is my bond creature, Sylvie." Elijah comments, "But dragons, I thought were extinct for a century. Double quotes. Arthur explains, "That's why you have to keep it a secret." Jasmine carries Samantha, who is still unconscious. The Arthur explains Jasmine already knows about her. The dragon licks Jasmine's face. Elijah thinks 11 years old, QUADRA-ELEMENTAL, deviant to elements, dragon bond. The three of them ride on the dragon's back. The dragon prepares to fly. Arthur said, "Elijah, let's go."